Okay, I want to talk to you in this video about two pairs of words that often get used incorrectly. And those two pairs of words are number and amount and fewer and less. So a lot of times people will use these two pairs sort of interchangeably, where they'll use number and amount as if they were the same thing and use fewer and less as if they were the same thing. And they're not exactly. So the way to remember this is, if you're talking about something that actually has a number and that is countable and is finite, you are going to use the words number and fewer. If it isn't something that is countable or finite, you're going to use amount and less. So as an example, if I am talking about murders in the state of Ohio, that is something that is actually countable, it's quantifiable, it's a number. And so I would, for example, say the number of murders in Ohio decreased last year. I would not say the amount of murders decreased last year, because it is finite, it is countable, so we use the word number. And the same thing goes with fewer. I would say there were fewer murders in Ohio last year. I wouldn't say there were less murders in Ohio last year, because it is something that is quantifiable. Now, if I am talking about crime, crime is more of a general term, and it isn't something that is actually quantifiable unless we set up actually parameters for what kind of crime we're talking about. So since crime is a concept that isn't actually countable, in that case I would use, for example, the word amount. I would say the amount of crime in Ohio has been increasing. Same thing, we would use the word less. There has been less crime in Ohio lately. The point here is that if it isn't something that is actually quantifiable, we are going to use amount and less. So to give you another example that might sort of help illustrate how we arrive at the difference is, let's say that I'm talking about bird seed. I feed birds in my backyard, and so I'm talking about bird seed. So bird seed is, again, something that isn't really quantifiable in the way that I'm using it. I'm just saying bird seed. And so it's something that is more sort of, vague. It isn't actually something that is countable. So in these cases, I would use amount and less. So I would say I need a certain amount of bird seed. And I might say I need less bird seed because there aren't as many birds. Now, on the other hand, if I'm talking about that I buy my bird seed in bags, if we're talking about bags of bird seed, well, then that is something that's quantifiable. And so I would say that I'm going to go get a certain number of bags of bird seed. And I would also, by the same token, say I need fewer bags of bird seed this year because there are fewer birds. Okay? So once again, the thing to remember is, if it's something that you're talking about that's quantifiable, we're going to use number and fewer. And if it is something that is not quantifiable in the way that we're using it, we use amount and less. Okay, so here's a place where you will see this improperly used a lot. When you go to a grocery store and they have the express lane, in most cases it will say something along the lines of express lane, 15 items or less. Well, that's wrong, because obviously the number of items you have is quantifiable. We can count it. In fact, they want you to count it. And so we shouldn't say 15 items or less. We should say 15 items or fewer. Okay? And the only place that I've seen that actually gets this right is there is a Meijer store up here in Perrysburg where they actually have it correct. And that's actually the first time I think that I've ever seen that correctly used in a grocery store. So anyway, the thing to keep in mind is, if it is something quantifiable, if you can count it, even if it's a huge number, as long as you can count it, you're going to use the words number and fewer. And if it isn't something that you're talking about that can actually be counted in the way you're using it, you are going to use amount and less. So hopefully that will help you be a better user of grammar.